Well, first of all, let's just have a look at where we are, really. Obviously, there have been all sorts of different results that we've had, all the way from that by-election result. But really, the main action so far today has been about this. It's been about the changes in councils, in those council elections we've had so far. And what this shows you is just how much churn there's been below the surface. So you don't actually get these numbers at the bottom of the screen because you see the total net change. What you don't see is that Labour actually gained 241, but in the meantime lost 71 seats. What you don't see is the Conservatives gained 4 and then lost 415. I mean, not much of a net change there. But all the same, the Lib Dems are pretty good showing here. Green's doing very well indeed. Other parties, so including independents, up by 115 and then losing 13. And that's one of the big stories here. One of the big stories being that Labour lost 71 seats, and quite a few of them in areas where previously they might have hoped to win them. Why is that? Well, part of the pattern we can see is evinced by this. This shows you, we've looked at ward-level data and broken it down and looked at areas with a low Muslim population and then a higher Muslim population, so over 20% Muslim population in each of these wards. And what you can see in areas where you have under 5% Muslim population, a slight increase in the Labour vote, and then going down to a big fall in higher proportions Muslim population areas there, underlining the fact there is this disaffection with Labour foreign policy, particularly in relation to Gaza right now. And you can see that in those overall numbers. I'll come back to that in a second, actually. But there's another thing, another shift that we've seen recently. It's this shift in areas that were previously strong Brexit voting areas that did go to the Conservatives are now shifting back to the Labour Party. So look at this. This is Nuneaton and Bedworth, Cannock Chase as well. It's a really similar story here. So look at the number of the seats. And remember here, this is a boundary change. So all of those seats were up for grabs. In Nuneaton and Bedworth, Conservatives down by 14, Labour up by 15, so you can see pretty much a swap there. And same thing in Cannock Chase as well. Conservatives down 11, Labour up 11, and in both cases, Labour gaining control from the Conservatives. So you are seeing something, particularly in the West Midlands there, that reverts. And looking at that kind of reversion, these are the seats, or rather the councils, that the Conservatives were defending in these elections here. So at the start of this contest, I'll get out of the way so you can see it, at the start of this contest, essentially all of this board was blue, all of these councils. So that puts it into context, doesn't it? And now just look at the change in colours. You know, all the way from some of Nuneaton and Bedworth, which I mentioned, all of these grey ones, that means Conservatives losing control of those councils. Even to places like Rushmore, Redditch, Rushmore in particular, no one really necessarily expected that a seemingly safe Conservative council would go to the Labour Party there. And when you kind of look at what we're talking about here, which is comparing the areas here with 2021, so the numbers you've got on your screen are mostly comparing with the previous elections in 2021, there was a big shift, OK? So the Conservatives down by 13, Labour up by 5.4% compared with 2021. So that was the big shift. But of course, remember, the Conservatives were riding high at that point. You had this vaccine bounce, everything looking quite positive at that point for Boris Johnson, as he was. But now compare this election, this council election, local elections, with last time around, 2023. Keir Starmer looking pretty punchy at that point, almost a 20-point margin between the two parties at that point. And the difference here, the Conservatives down by 2.5%, but actually Labour down by 1.2%. And that's partly what I think explains what you see in this picture. And in Beth's package a moment ago, she referred to this, the national equivalent vote. This goes all the way back to the 1990s. Just look at the red, look at Labour, actually falling a touch there, down to 35% here. But really the big action and the most significant kind of trend is the Conservatives down to 26%. That's the lowest they've been, actually kind of similar more or less in 2013, but you've really got to go back to the kind of mid-90s to see another period when they were quite so low. The difference for the Labour Party is they are not up at those kind of levels that Tony Blair enjoyed in the mid-90s. They are still down there. However, and I think it's a big proviso, first of all, that hasn't taken account of what's happening in Scotland at the moment. Really big story right now, because, of course, these elections don't refer to that. And secondly, you've got to ask the question whether that 22% of independence is likely to be reflected when it comes to a first-past-the-post, winner-takes-all system, or is that just something that we're seeing with those council results in those particular Labour areas? But really interesting, and it's going to continue to evolve as we get more numbers through and as we get those results coming through from London tomorrow as well.